You've seen the logos, you've heard the rumble, but what's happening behind the scenes right now will shake more than just chrome and steel. Watch to the end to find out the truth about your favorite brand, and the bike that just beat it is bigger than anyone expected. The $4,000 knockout. A $4,000 cruiser didn't just compete with the Road King, it humiliated it. It wasn't a fair fight. Not when the Honda Shadow 750 rolled up with a calm growl and a price tag that undercut the Harley-Davidson Road King by over $35,000. That figure isn't a typo. It's a wake-up call. For the first time in modern cruiser history, a working-class rider had access to a machine that looked the part, rode like a dream, and didn't require a second mortgage. The Honda Shadow 750 wasn't a fluke. It was a calculated strike against everything bloated and exclusive in American motorcycling. Its affordability wasn't a gimmick, it was a declaration. A used Shadow 750 could be had for as little as $4,000, fully loaded, road-ready, and dripping with chrome. Compare that to the average price of a new Harley Road King, hovering above $39,000 with basic customizations, and the gap becomes more than economic. It becomes philosophical. What Honda did was democratize the cruiser. They built something that offered true performance without the premium price tag. Riders who once gazed longingly at Harley dealership windows were now thumbing starter buttons on Shadows, feeling that same sense of freedom without the crushing debt. And while some assumed a $4,000 bike would feel like a compromise, early adopters were shocked. The Shadow didn't just match expectations, it exceeded them. It turns out, value isn't just about price, it's about what you get for it. And what Shadow owners were getting was real power, real quality, and real pride of ownership. This wasn't a scooter disguised as a cruiser. It was a fully capable, full-size, V-twin-powered motorcycle designed to go head-to-head with America's finest and win. That shocking sticker price drew attention, but what truly shook riders came years down the road, when reliability becomes a revolution. This bike doesn't just ride, it refuses to die. The Honda Shadow 750 earned its reputation not through ad campaigns or nostalgia, but through pure, relentless reliability. Owners speak of it with a kind of reverence usually reserved for diesel trucks and cast-iron cookware. It just works. No oil leaks. No dead batteries in the garage after 2 weeks. No rattling bolts after a few hundred miles. Just consistency. Predictability. Trust. That's what drew riders away from the Road King. They were tired of spending more time in service bays than on highways. One former Harley owner described the moment it changed for him. His Road King had stranded him twice on long trips, first with an electrical issue, then with a belt snap. After the second incident, he bought a used Shadow for less than a new Harley's extended warranty plan. 5 years later, he's put on over 20,000 miles, and the only thing he's replaced is the rear tire. There's a reason Honda earned a legacy around the phrase, "runs like a Honda." It's not marketing fluff. It's real-world dependability. The Shadow's engine is over-engineered in the best way. The V-twin is liquid-cooled, runs cooler than most air-cooled Harley blocks, and is known to stretch well past 100,000 miles with regular oil changes. Service intervals are longer, parts are cheaper, and roadside breakdowns are almost unheard of. For many riders, reliability isn't just convenience, it's dignity. It's the freedom to ride without worrying about whether the engine will stutter at a red light or refuse to start after a coffee stop. The Shadow doesn't make excuses. It performs every time. It's not trying to impress you with heritage or legacy. It just works. And that's exactly what riders need. Once trust was earned in the engine, riders started paying attention to something else entirely: the feel. If this reminds you of a ride you've trusted, or one that let you down, hit like and drop a comment. We want your story in this conversation right now. The smoothest ride you'll never brag about. While the Road King rumbles, the Shadow glides, and for many riders, that's the difference between a Sunday showpiece and a true long-haul machine. The Honda Shadow 750 isn't loud for the sake of being loud. It doesn't shake your teeth at idle. It doesn't demand attention with raw, aggressive noise. Instead, it delivers a kind of ride quality that's so smooth, it almost goes unnoticed. until you step off and realize you're not exhausted. The Shadow's frame geometry, seat position, and suspension tuning come together like a jazz trio, each part in harmony. The low-slung seat hugs you into the chassis. The wide bars give leverage without fatigue. The foot pegs aren't pushed too far forward so your back doesn't arch into pain. Everything is measured, restrained, and engineered for balance. And then there's the engine. The liquid-cooled V-twin is smoother than any air-cooled Harley in its class. It doesn't overheat in stop-and-go traffic. It doesn't radiate heat into your legs at low speed. It just delivers quiet, steady torque that rolls out like warm syrup. Riders report going hundreds of miles without a single vibration-related annoyance, a stark contrast to the Road King's signature shake, which some find charming, but many secretly hate. The Shadow doesn't brag. It doesn't need to. Its smooth ride is its quiet rebellion, a refusal to equate noise with soul or harshness with character. This is comfort without compromise, performance without punishment. Behind that effortless ride was a system of hidden upgrades no one expected from a bike this affordable. Underdog tech that stuns at stoplights. The Shadow doesn't just hide its power, it hides its sophistication. Beneath its simple silhouette lies an array of technology that Harley-Davidson has either ignored or priced into premium models. That $4,000 price tag includes a shaft drive system, something you won't find on any Road King. It's quiet, clean, and maintenance-free. No belts to replace, no chains to lube, just smooth, seamless delivery of power to the rear wheel. Then there's the digital ignition system, more efficient and reliable than the analog setups used in older Harley models. It delivers quicker starts, cleaner combustion, and better fuel economy. Pair that with the Shadow's hydraulic clutch, and you've got a bike that's not just easier to ride, but easier on your hands in stop-and-go traffic. These are the kinds of upgrades that aren't flashy, but they change how a bike feels every single day. The Shadow doesn't boast about these features, it just integrates them quietly and effectively. That's the Honda way. Refined, proven engineering that works in the background while you ride in the foreground. It's not about flashy screens or overly complex rider modes, it's about making everything work so well you forget it's there. And when you ride something this refined, at a price this low, you start to wonder what else the industry has been hiding behind inflated price tags and lifestyle marketing. It was only after riders hit the streets that the Shadow's true impact began to surface. The commuter who beat the weekend warriors. While others were polishing chrome, he was clocking 60 miles a day. That was the quiet truth behind the Shadow 750's growing cult following. In cities and suburbs across the country, riders weren't just pulling their bikes out on Sundays, they were using them as daily tools. Rain or shine, cold mornings or hot afternoons, the Honda Shadow kept showing up. One rider, a postal worker from Pennsylvania, had logged over 35,000 miles commuting 5 days a week. Not because he was showing off, because it was the most practical machine he had ever owned. The Shadow isn't intimidating. That's part of its power. The seat height is low, the clutch is light, and the throttle isn't twitchy. It's the kind of motorcycle that invites you in rather than daring you to prove yourself. New riders love it. Shorter riders love it. Older riders coming back to the saddle after decades away especially love it. And once they start using it for errands, work, or weekend getaways, the Shadow reveals its deeper strengths. Fuel economy on the Shadow 750 routinely pushes beyond 45 miles per gallon, depending on riding style. That means a full tank, roughly 3.7 gallons, can take you more than 150 miles without blinking. That kind of efficiency starts to matter when fuel prices spike or your ride to work includes a highway stretch. And unlike larger cruisers that feel overbuilt for urban life, the Shadow threads traffic without fuss. It's nimble enough for back roads, but stable enough for long commutes. Racking up miles was one thing, but what happened when it came time to trade and stunned even seasoned riders? Resale value that exposes the King's decline, it's the only cruiser that earns back your respect and your money. When longtime riders listed their used Shadows online, they were stunned by the response. Clean, well-maintained models often sold within days. Some even fetched close to their original purchase price, especially if outfitted with tasteful mods or low miles. In a market saturated with overpriced toys and underused chrome statues, the Shadow 750 had become a rare thing, a motorcycle that held real value. That's where the comparison to the Road King gets uncomfortable. Harley-Davidson has built its entire empire on the idea that a Harley is an investment. And for decades that was true, but in the modern used market things have changed. While premium Harleys can still hold value if babied and low mileage, everyday models often depreciate like any other vehicle. Add in high maintenance costs, insurance premiums, and financing structures, and the Harley dream starts looking more like a financial burden. The Shadow, by contrast, lives in the sweet spot. Affordable to buy, cheap to maintain, and easy to sell. Buyers trust the Honda name. They know the engine will last. They know parts are available. And they know they're not walking into a lifestyle tax when they hit the used market. The result? A shadowy flood of Honda cruisers changing hands at fair prices while Harley owners watch theirs sit, linger, or sell low. With that resale strength, owners stopped playing by dealership rules and started building their bikes their way. Custom freedom without a loan. They said you had to pay to stand out until the Shadow community proved them wrong. On forums, YouTube channels, and social media feeds, riders are turning their Shadows into bobbers, baggers, rat bikes, and choppers. And they're doing it without six-figure garages or boutique Harley dealers. Why? Because the Shadow is easy to work on, rich with aftermarket parts, and doesn't punish experimentation. There's an entire subculture built around modding the Shadow 750. Need a new set of handlebars? $50 online. Want to swap the exhaust? Dozens of bolt-on kits under $100. Saddlebags, windshields, light kits, forward controls. Everything is available, affordable, and community tested. Compare that to Harley's catalog, where even a set of foot pegs can run over $200, and installation is often considered a dealer service. Shadow riders don't just save money, they express themselves without restraint. The platform encourages play. It forgives mistakes. It makes riders feel welcome, not excluded. You don't need a custom shop to personalize a Shadow, you just need a wrench, a weekend, and a vision. Personal expression turned into cultural defiance, and that's when the loyalty lines started to crack. The brand backlash nobody was ready for. To Harley loyalists, switching to a Honda is betrayal, but the backlash only made it worse. Online forums lit up with accusations. Metric trash, some called it. Trader bike, others said. And yet the Shadow owners kept riding, calmly, confidently, and without apology. The divide wasn't just mechanical anymore, it was tribal. Some riders reported being snubbed at group meetups when they arrived on a Honda. Others were told flat out they weren't welcome on certain rides. One veteran biker who traded in his Road King for a Shadow after a back injury said the insults hit harder than any pothole, but he didn't regret the switch. "I ride more now," he said. "I ride further, and I don't worry about breakdowns. If that makes me a trader, so be it." That cultural conflict revealed something deeper. Harley had become less about the ride and more about the image. Owning one wasn't just a choice, it was a declaration of allegiance. But for a growing number of riders, allegiance didn't mean much when the experience no longer delivered. The Shadow wasn't trying to be something it wasn't. It didn't need a backstory, a brand patch, or a loud pipe to earn respect. It just had to work. While tempers flared in online forums, something much bigger was already rewriting the balance of power. The rise of the metric cruiser army. The fastest-growing cruiser segment isn't American, it's metric. While the Harley-Davidson mystique still clings to roadside bars and dealership showrooms, the numbers are telling a very different story. Japanese manufacturers, Honda, Yamaha, Kawasaki, and Suzuki, have been quietly dominating the cruiser market, especially in the mid-range and used segments. Their strategy is simple. Build reliable, affordable bikes that appeal to riders who care more about performance than perception. Over the past 5 years, metric cruisers have steadily eaten into Harley's domestic share. In 2023 alone, Honda saw a double-digit percentage increase in used cruiser registrations in the United States, with the Shadow 750 leading the charge. At the same time, Harley's growth remained flat, propped up only by promotional financing and limited edition models. The reality is hard to ignore. Riders are moving toward brands that offer more value and fewer headaches. Globally, the shift is even more dramatic. In Asia, Africa, and parts of Europe, metric cruisers have already become the default. Riders in developing markets see them as dependable, sensible machines. In Australia, sales of new Honda cruisers have outpaced Harley models for 3 years running. And in Latin America, Harley's price point has made it a luxury brand with limited reach, while Honda has saturated every tier of the market. Sales data told one story, but inside Harley's boardroom, the reaction was pure panic. The brand crisis inside Harley's boardroom. Inside Harley's executive suite, the panic had begun to set in. The warning signs weren't just on balance sheets, they were in the parking lots. Harley execs were noticing fewer young riders, fewer trade-ins, fewer loyalists. For decades, the company had relied on one powerful asset: its brand. The Bar and Shield logo was more than a mark, it was a cultural identity. But identity only goes so far when your competitors are offering similar performance at a fraction of the cost. The lineup was aging, both literally and figuratively. Many of Harley's core models hadn't seen meaningful updates in years. The Road King, once a symbol of modern touring, was now criticized for its weight, outdated interface, and lack of entry-level accessibility. And while Harley had launched the Livewire electric bike and a few lighter cruisers, those efforts felt disconnected from their core audience. The brand had trapped itself in its own mythology. Dependence on heritage branding became a noose. Every attempt to innovate risked alienating traditionalists. But failing to evolve left the door wide open for brands like Honda, who didn't carry that historical burden. While Harley debated what it meant to be authentic, Honda simply built better bikes and let the results speak for themselves. Those nervous glances around the boardroom table? Wall Street noticed them too. Wall Street flinches first. Harley's numbers didn't lie, and Wall Street took notice. After years of flat sales and stagnant growth, investors began questioning the company's long-term strategy. In early 2024, a major investment bank issued a rare downgrade on Harley-Davidson stock, citing limited adaptability, underperformance in key emerging markets, and over-reliance on legacy brand equity. The stock price dipped 6% in a single week. It wasn't a crash, but it was a signal. Institutional investors were starting to shift their outlook. They no longer viewed Harley as a growth company. Instead, it was beginning to resemble a luxury brand in decline, like a watchmaker whose product had been outclassed by cheaper smartwatches. The fundamentals were weakening and competitors were capitalizing. Analysts pointed to Honda's momentum as the clearest contrast. While Harley fumbled with brand identity, Honda's motorcycle division quietly surged. They had diversified models for every price bracket. They operated leaner factories with tighter cost controls, and their resale values were outperforming expectations. In one report, an analyst wrote, "Honda may not make headlines, but they're winning the war that matters: ownership loyalty." While headlines focused on Harley's fall, Honda was quietly tightening its grip on the future. Honda's quiet market siege. Honda didn't launch a campaign, they laid a trap. While Harley wrestled with image and investor pressure, Honda executed a quiet, calculated market siege. It didn't start in America, it started globally. In Thailand, India, Brazil, and Indonesia, Honda motorcycles were already dominating. Their factories were humming. Their supplier chains were battle-tested, and their customers weren't chasing image, they were chasing function. That global infrastructure gave Honda an unbeatable advantage. They could build at scale, adapt quickly, and ship anywhere. Their R&D was focused, not flashy. When they made improvements, fuel injection systems, shaft drive efficiency, frame geometry refinements, they didn't host massive unveilings. They just rolled the changes out and let riders feel the difference. The Shadow 750 is a perfect example. It didn't arrive with fireworks. It wasn't announced with celebrity endorsements. It just entered the market, outperformed expectations, and quietly built an army of loyalists. By the time Harley noticed, the market had already shifted beneath their feet. The effects didn't stay in the showroom. Shockwaves were already hitting the rest of the industry. Rival brands braced for the storm. While Harley reeled, the rest of the industry rearmed. Japanese and Indian manufacturers weren't content to sit on the sidelines watching Honda carve through Harley's stronghold. They saw the writing on the wall. Affordable cruisers weren't just an emerging trend, they were becoming the new standard. And if Honda could reposition the conversation around value, comfort, and dependability, there was no reason others couldn't follow. Kawasaki moved quickly, fast-tracking upgrades to their Vulcan series. Engineers were pulled off sport bike development to refine ride ergonomics and streamline maintenance. By late 2024, they announced a new mid-sized Vulcan S with improved suspension, tuned exhaust, and a price under $6,000. Clearly aiming for the Shadow's shadow. Yamaha followed suit. Their Bolt series received an overhaul, ditching flashy performance claims in favor of stripped-down, rider-friendly design. They added optional tech features like ride modes and digital clusters while still managing to keep the entry-level price below $7,000. Royal Enfield, meanwhile, saw an opportunity to go even lower. Their Meteor 350 and Super Meteor 650 models were already popular in Europe and Asia. They quickly pushed distribution into the United States, targeting first-time cruiser buyers with classic looks, solid handling, and prices starting under $5,000. As companies scrambled to stay afloat, the storm spread beyond factories and landed squarely in Washington. When the trade war came for the cruisers, the cruiser wars just turned political, and the backlash reached Capitol Hill. As Harley's sales declined and imported metric cruisers flooded the market, powerful voices began to speak out. Harley-Davidson lobbyists, backed by long-standing political allies, called for protective tariffs, arguing that unfair foreign competition was undermining American manufacturing. They pointed to Japan's subsidized steel, to India's lower labor costs, and to the growing reliance on Chinese components in metric cruisers. In mid-2024, a bipartisan group of lawmakers introduced the American Motorcycle Fairness Act, which proposed tariffs on imported motorcycles under 1,000 cubic centimeters. The timing was no coincidence. Harley had quietly supported the legislation, framing it as necessary for national economic security. Behind closed doors, there were whispers that Harley's leadership had warned of more layoffs unless the federal government stepped in. But public opinion was split. Riders didn't want politics in their garages. Thousands of Shadow, Vulcan, and Bolt owners flooded online forums and social media with pushback. They argued that choice, quality, and affordability were more important than protecting a brand that had priced itself out of reach. Some even posted photos of their Shadows next to American flags, insisting that freedom of choice was the most patriotic principle of all. Policy debates lit up the Capitol, but the real pain was starting to show on the factory floor. Labor fights back. Job loss, training gaps, collapsing dealer networks. This was more than brand loyalty. As sales slowed and Harley cut production quotas, the impact wasn't theoretical. Factory workers in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania were told to expect furloughs. Independent Harley mechanics reported fewer service calls. Smaller dealerships struggled to move inventory and quietly laid off staff. And parts suppliers, once confident in long-term contracts, began to hedge. Unions representing Harley's workers pushed back hard. They demanded protections, retraining programs, and a seat at the strategy table. They saw what was coming. A world where bikes built abroad were not only cheaper to buy, but cheaper to maintain. And that meant fewer shop hours, fewer certified techs, and fewer full-time jobs. The layoffs weren't just numbers on a spreadsheet, they were fathers, mothers, veterans, people who had spent decades building a product that now struggled to justify its premium. Some union leaders tried to pivot, suggesting partnerships with Japanese firms or Skillshare programs that would let mechanics work across brands, but others were more defiant. They blamed metric culture for eroding America's manufacturing soul. They accused Honda and Kawasaki of flooding the market and lawmakers of standing idly by. Inside Harley's own workforce, morale was split. Some believed in the brand's comeback. Others quietly began applying elsewhere. Those layoffs and shutdowns left riders and investors asking the same urgent question: what happens next? If you followed this far, you see what others don't. Subscribe now, because what's coming next in the motorcycle world could change how, what, and why you ride forever. What this means for you. This fight over two wheels is really a fight over your wallet, your identity, and your future. The rise of the Honda Shadow 750 didn't just unsettle Harley-Davidson, it shook the foundations of what motorcycles mean to Americans. Are bikes still status symbols? Or are they practical machines meant to serve rather than impress? Do you buy a brand or do you buy performance, comfort, and value? For consumers, the shift is clear. A new generation of riders wants machines that work without demanding a lifestyle. They want bikes they can afford, customize, ride daily, and sell without a loss. And in that environment, Honda wins. So does Kawasaki. So does Royal Enfield. The more pressure they apply, the more Harley will have to change or fade into premium obscurity. For investors, the message is urgent. Legacy brands that rely on heritage without innovation are vulnerable. The cruiser market has become dynamic, fast-moving, and global. Companies that can scale, adapt, and offer consistent reliability at a fair price will dominate. Brands that cling to image while ignoring function will bleed market share. The rules have changed, and only the flexible will survive. And if this war continues, Harley may not survive the next chapter. This isn't just about bikes, it's about control, value, and choosing a side in a changing world. If this opened your eyes, don't just scroll away. Like, comment, and subscribe, because the next wave is already building, and if you're not watching closely, you'll be the one left behind.